A metatrend is a trend that's going on beneath and alongside a number of different outer trends. And beginning this segment, I want you to imagine or kind of look at the mechanics of human walking. So we're bipedal, and a sphere or a circle is the most efficient mode for transforming or transmuting energy. If we want to transport something from one place to another, we want circular wheels. You have the least friction. And, if we were circular wheels, we would roll. But the way that we have our kind of simulation of the wheel is this process of walking. And so as forward motion gets kind of translated into a polarity or a duality, what we do is we start on 2 feet and we put all our weight on the left foot and we lean into the future. And at the point that we're lifting up the right foot, the biggest concentration of weight is on the left foot. And we use that momentum and the rigidity of the left foot to lean in and place the weight on the right foot. And then we use the momentum to stiffen the right leg and put all of the weight on the right leg and lean forward as we lift up the left foot. And so another way of looking at this is a pendulum swing. And there are many fractal patterns where this core principle of transition in a polarity expresses itself. And so one of the most important things for the species over time is large-scale emphasis between the masculine and feminine, the yin and the yang. And so basically any interaction between two human beings has a polarity in the interaction. So for example, if there's a speaker, there has to be a listener, or there really isn't a speaker. If a tree fell out in the forest and no one heard it, did it make a sound? For all intensive purposes, no. There has to be a listener for speaking to exist. Now, we think, okay, well, we're often our own listener. We internalize, we speak, and then we listen to what we say. You've got the feminine-masculine polarity. But if you just say something and nobody hears it, you don't have communication. You have something, but it's not communication. And so what we've had, and for a gift to be exchanged, an object to be exchanged, there has to be a giver and there has to be a receiver. And the listener is in the feminine polarity. The receiver is in the feminine polarity. And it's very important to separate this from gender, because every male and every female gives and receives, speaks and listens, teaches and learns, leads and follows. So in any exchange, both genders do both. But in the larger swings of cultural emphasis, we move, much like the human walking, from an emphasis on masculine energy and masculine values and masculine traits to feminine energy and feminine values and feminine traits. And the transition point from one to the other is often the point of greatest rigidity, because that is what is providing the springboard for the next step. And so the meta trend that I want to look deeply at and explore in several expressions is the stepping or the emphasis from the masculine trait, the masculine energy, to the feminine energy. And it's an incredibly important shift. Now, imbalances of any kind feel uncomfortable, particularly in a sick body. For example, the point, if you have strong arthritis, that you will feel the most pain is when all the stress of the body is on one side or the other. But it's that rigidity and the leaning forward into the future that actually prepares the space. And scientifically, there's no conflict between feminine and masculine energy. There's no conflict between men and women. A scientist will point out from an objective perspective that if there really were a battle of the sexes and the men won and killed all the women, there would be no men the next generation. That's pretty obvious on a scientific basis, so there really is no war, there's a collaboration. Similarly, if all the feminists, got their own way and, eliminated all masculinity and etc., or all males, there'd just be, bitchiness amongst themselves. And there's also, there has to be a balance, because if you have a listener and no speaker, it's just as bad as having a speaker and no listener when the goal is communication. And so, some 4,000 to 8,000 years ago or beyond, there were more cultures on the planet that were feminine. And in a low technological state, in a state of, upheavals and, transitioning from, Europe over to the Americas and things like that, one of the things that the species needs is brawn, physical mass, because you're fighting bears, you're axing down trees, you're plowing fields, you're going to war with your neighbor to hold on to your land. And so in very rudimentary cultures, you want the masculine to be the leader because men have stronger bodies, statistically speaking. And so you would ideally want a male firefighter, all things being equal. If you were just rolling the dice and saying, what's the most likely, result to get my child out of a fire, and you could pick male or female, statistically speaking, you'd pick a male because they have superior brawn. And they also have, within the focus of testosterone and stuff, a better ability to zero in and exclude all other data. So the male psyche, to some extent, is more competent in tunnel vision, in kind of, one might traditionally think of it as, the hunt focus. You've got to aim and throw the spear exactly, and it's all about the point. If the circle is the feminine energy, the point is the masculine energy. And so there, to some extent, when you're dealing with a hunting type environment, with a sociopathic environment that requires strategy and planning and doing things that don't feel good, that require a lot of muscle, but that which prepare the way for the family, well, it's intelligent to have a valuing of those masculine traits, because if a strong man doesn't get the child out of the fire, the child is dead, male or female. If the breadwinner to some extent doesn't come back with the income, the family suffers. And so to the degree that you have a physically oriented, like Stone Age, Bronze Age, Industrial Age, as a general rule, for example, I'm a landscaper and I hire a crew for competency. As a general rule, if I roll the dice and, give a woman a pickaxe, and give a male a pickaxe, as a general rule, the data is clear. There's an 80% stronger likelihood that at the end of the day, the male will have trenched deeper and farther than the female. And so, within an equal capitalist framework, I would either pay the female less per hour, or she would get less per hour for the job done, if it was done by the job, because it would take her body a little bit more hours. And so this is the basis in the Stone Age and, in our historical past for overvaluing the masculine energy. By overvaluing, what we mean is leaning harder on that, emphasizing it more, which you do when you're, if the male is the left side, then, as you're taking that step, you're leaning that. And the goal in a forward-moving, evolving culture is to prepare that the masculine, for example, builds the house to prepare for the feminine energy of the family. They're in partnership with one another, but in different environments, one is superior. So why the meta-trend towards feminine energy? And with that, females. Why the ascendancy of, female at this time? And there's a couple of, underlying reasons. So one is information versus brawn. We're now in the information age. And information does not give a damn about muscle. You could be Mr. Universe, or you could be Miss Petite, vegan. And there is no edge on information. You don't have a typing edge because you're Mr. Universe. So as with the pivot towards the information age, the feminine traits start becoming more valuable and the masculine traits less so. If we were out on the farm, if we were laying road and crane infrastructure and highway infrastructure, taking a whole new country. When we go to colonize the moon, for example, or move people to Mars, there may be a period in that time where masculine energy is instinctively elevated, despite what's going on, etc., because it's nice to have someone a little taller who can reach. It's nice to have someone who can run a mile a little bit faster when you're in a physical situation of duress. But for much of the world, we're moving towards an information-based culture. And women may even be able to type faster. Now, the male psyche is better at point thinking, getting to the point, strategy, rationality. In some areas, it's really about a predisposition to focus on a very small area with great concentration, whether for a short time or long term, to focus on something, on a goal. The feminine energy is much more circularly oriented. And as we move from get this fence post in the ground now to relationships in a complex global economy, diffuse vision becomes more important. You have to make decisions that take into account the value of the Chinese currency, the time of year that a certain item is going to sell, the Chinese culture in your Chinese factory and their special holidays, the gestures that create respect in that culture and compare them with the gestures that create respect in your own culture. And you have your touchy manager who's a brilliant engineer in this area, but doesn't handle criticism well. So you have to learn how to talk with them in just the right way. And then over here, you've got the bank that's feeling insecure, and you've got to present a vision to that bank, manager that shows that your loan with the bank is secure. And so you've got to make a decision in the moment that touches on all of these things which are growing more and more complex by the year. You have to decide, for example, whether a certain amount of your investment portfolio for your retirement should be in Bitcoin or should be, in stocks and commodities or this and that. You have to decide whether to hedge. Purchase a certain amount of currency as you get orders, so that you're based on currency volatility, you don't end up selling for a loss as you fulfill your contract for a set price. Now, what we're talking about is full spectrum vision, and this is what female bodies are more aware of. The female is traditionally using her influence for the good of the family, which is the good of the circle. So it's a diffuse awareness. Yes, that would be good for this one thing, but it would be bad for 5 other things that you're not paying attention to. Let me handle this one. And so as we move into a more complex global economy versus a narrow beam simplistic model of this is the way it is and it's just that way and that's all I have to focus on, female or feminine approaches, be they in male or female bodies, feminine approaches of complex diffuse awareness becomes more valuable. Now, the more complex the awareness and the more variables in play, the greater possibility there is for positive and negative synergy. But each variable is important to this. And so what's happening is the underlying reality is changing very quickly, meaning in that transition as a species from the strong leaning on the masculine energy to beginning to take that step into what will be an equally strong leaning into feminine energy. For evolution to take place, for forward motion to take place, you've got to hand off power between these two polarities, both within the psyche, within each of us as individuals, and within the larger culture and global framework. Partnering and synergy is, in a complex environment, capable of producing higher yields of money, well-being, health, etc., than individual achievement. And so, the archetype of, the rugged individual is the one who's going to build their own fence and cut their own trees down and build their own house and, milk their own cows and, whatever. It's like, I don't need anyone. I'm an individual. And out in the wilds and, et cetera, and in the jungle, et cetera, that attitude prevails. There's no one else necessarily to partner with in a frontier. But as the culture matures and you have opportunities to synergize and partner to mutual exponential benefit, then your relating skills and your partnering and synergizing skills become significantly more important than your rugged independence in terms of the success. The intelligent move is to move towards feminine energy because intelligence is the efficiency with which a unit of energy is transformed into a unit of value, into a unit of well-being. Well-being is the underlying value currency for every human being. Every single human being is trying to feel better, well-being, and avoid feeling worse. Everyone is up to that game. That's the underlying currency of the species, and money is only valuable to the extent it helps you feel better and not feel worse. A car is only better to the extent that it helps you feel better and not feel worse. Medicine, a faster computer, it's all about feeling better and not feeling worse. And feelings themselves are the feminine pole with thinking or acting in the masculine pole. So you have the felt internal experience as the feminine domain. We also have an interconnected economy. And, what this means is that, if Russia's economy collapsed tomorrow, there might be a global recession. If Greece's economy went bankrupt, there could be a European recession, which could lead to a recession in the United States or in Japan. we are now in an interconnected economy. We're in a global economy. So our ecology economically has expanded from the town. First it was the town, right? You made bread for the people in your town. You milled flour for the people in your town. You had a town economy. And it's pretty simple. And then you had a national economy, or a state economy. Then you had a national company. We're often in a global economy, and never more so in the information age. Because, for example, if an app is really good, people use it all around the world. Why shouldn't they? It's available on the Android store, so you're dealing with a global economy. As you deal with an interconnected global economy, where one person's economic failure may ripple back and become your economic failure because suddenly your biggest customer can't buy anything from you because they're broke, war becomes less profitable. And war is one of those domains in which the male brawn shines. And so as wars become less profitable, as wars become destructive to the global well-being, the underlying currency of well-being, and are seen to be more and more destructive because we can see the interconnectedness more clearly in an interconnected economy. The idea of I went out and damaged the world economy and used my superior brawn to do it faster than women could have done it is not a bragging point. It's why do you have to be so caught up into that and ruin all of our economies? Go get a life. In other words, that particular thing has moved from a hero is moving more to a resented villain. It's like, if these people would stop damaging our economies with their little ego battles and this and that and the other, everyone would benefit. And so there again, women are less likely to go to war. And the fact that they are less physically competent in war as a statistic, meaning, all things being equal, if it's hand-to-hand combat, and you can pick 1,000 women and I can pick 1,000 men, and it's hand-to-hand combat, or who can cross the desert faster, that's who wins the war, whatever. That's why they have separate Olympics for men and women. Some, in the feminist movement, this fact has been obfuscated because within the chauvinism of masculine and feminine energy, many feminists are chauvinistic in that they really think that who can fire a gun faster or run faster is the ultimate value, meaning they're out of touch with this transition. And so the idea is to say, well, women can do that as good as men. Statistically, bodies are built for different purposes, the female, and they're not better or worse purposes. It depends on the environment. So we're in a culture, as we become more interconnected globally, economically, where wars hurt everyone. And so the fact that men are superior in hand-to-hand combat statistically, and that's not to say that a woman can't become a black belt karate person that knocks down 90% of the men who are not black belts. It's just to say that two black belt karate people equally trained with good fitness, etc., the male body is statistically a little bigger, and their muscular and focusing structure is a little bit more predisposed to that sharp masculine energy. It's just that that's not what our species needs at this time as much as in the past. If you're an agricultural community of peasants and the neighboring Raja is going to burn your crops and rape your women and kill your children and take your land, and the men have an edge and they can stop that, that's hallelujah, thank goodness. But we're not in that world for the most part. As we transition out of that world, feminine energy is more valuable. War is less valuable. The other is the phenomena of all extremes. All extremes prepare for their counterpart by the dis-ease of all extreme. You know, if you think of a sphere, it's perfectly centered and balanced, and wherever you move the sphere, it is perfectly centered and balanced. But when you kind of bifurcate the sphere into a polarity and you're walking, you see, if I keep leaning on the left leg and refuse to place the right leg in front of me, I fall over. And it's painful. In other words, extremism on any side equals dis-ease. It equals pain. It equals failure. In order to grow as a healthy culture, we have to move back and forth between these two polar energies. And we're at the point where an excessive form of chauvinism in the form of overemphasizing masculine energy is creating failure and pain more than easing up and saying, stop being so dogmatic, let's let some feminine energy in to create relief, to create healing, to keep things centered. So you have to pivot to the extreme and put all the pressure on one leg in order to take the next step. But if you don't take the next step, if you've gotten confused over the last 1,000 or so years, and you think the whole point is just to take masculine energy to its total extreme, you end up with more and more pain, more and more failure, because these energies are designed and in fact function in partnership. And one of the things is in the masculine-feminine expression is masculine is all about the outer. I've got a bigger house than you. Well, I added 3 bathrooms. Well, I've got a Porsche. Well, I've got a Maserati. I've got a this. So it's all about the outer competition for wealth. Now, when you've got 1 carrot and your neighbor has 2 carrots, that's a big deal. That's all the food there is. You know, that's the difference between being hungry and so the outer competition is intelligent when there is scarcity in the outer domain. And so the obsession with masculine energy, the competition, the comparison, the who got there first, who got the biggest apple, all of that is intelligent in a scarcity mentality of survival in physical terms. Now, the same thing becomes toxic extremism at a certain point on the endless continuum towards masculine energy. When you've got 3 Maseratis, so now, you know, your neighbor has to buy 4. When you've got 3 mansions around the world, and so you know your neighbor has to have 5 mansions. When you're making $2.1 million a year, so now you've got to get a raise to $2.2 million. When so-and-so is working 50 hours a week at the office, so now you're going to work 60 because that's more masculine and shows you've got more, you know, more butch, you've got more brawn, and you know I'm not going to be. When that race becomes independently dogmatic and ignores the underlying value of well-being, you get the following phenomena. People arrive at being, quote, totally successful on masculine terms. They never feel that way, but they arrive. They're a billionaire. They own this company. They've got 6 cars. They've got several trophy wives. They've got whatever it is that's the metric of masculine, chauvinistic success. And they're not happy. You see, the underlying currency of every human being is feeling good and not feeling bad. George Lucas, on a video on called Project Happiness, I believe it was talking with the kids. And, George is a billionaire. And he says, I'm glad you're doing this video on happiness. He said, I can now buy 5 yachts. And it doesn't do it. I don't feel the happiness I got when I bought my first dinghy. When I got from not being able to go out in the water and I got a dinghy, that was revolutionary. I was now, mobile on the water. When I, went from dreaming about being able to get my first car and I got my first car, now I could drive around and I looked cool, etc. I could buy the most expensive car on the planet and it wouldn't make me feel as good as it would to have gotten that first boat a year earlier, rusted and this and that and the other. In other words, there's a diminishing return. With all extremism, there's a path of diminishing returns, where if you continue towards the extreme, more hedonism, more sex, more money, more this, it becomes addictive. And the phenomena of hedonic adaptation, hedonism, the adaptation to hedonism, basically. The hedonic adaptation principle says that, when you have your first bite of chocolate cake, it's exquisite. Your second case is, filling and it's just very satisfying. By the time you're on your fifth piece of chocolate cake, you feel sick. And the next bite is not even not going to do what the first bite did. It's going to make you feel worse because you're in a toxic extreme. And more of our people, meaning despite the ignorance about what's going on, there's some great TED Talks with I think it's a Swedish professor or Norwegian professor, I forget his name, Max or something, he's now dead. But, what's happened in the global economy is that the rest of the world is becoming middle class very rapidly. Now, as the world reaches this point of kind of peak hedonism, we have a couple of crises. One is the planet cannot support 100 tons of garbage per person, which is the American statistic right now. As an American living the American life, there will be 100 tons of garbage in a landfill by the time we're dead, because the emphasis on buying things and then throwing them away and buying more and throwing them away and buying more, and the narrow band focus of I want this now without understanding what's going to happen, is a masculine focus. It's a focus on materialism, competition. I want that not because I need it. I just want more because so-and-so has more. And the cult's values are valuing these metrics. They're valuing masculine traits. And you can look at this in a cult that has a Fortune 500 list. So a Fortune 500 list doesn't measure kindness, doesn't measure teamwork, doesn't measure how you feel, doesn't measure ecology. It simply measures, gross revenues or the richest people. Now, the richest people, as you go from 2 billion to 3 billion, your happiness doesn't go up 30%. As you go from 10,000, as you go from a salary of $10,000 a year to $15,000 a year, your income does go up. Your happiness does go up 30% because you're going out of survival into security or a little bit more survival. So, when you're in starvation, basically, material safety and externals produce high yields in well-being, so they're intelligent. There is a point of diminishing returns. And as George Lucas said, I could buy the most expensive this or that anywhere, and it wouldn't do it for me the way it did before. And this creates a depression in myopic dogmatic thinking. It creates a depression because people at the top, and there are more and more of them there, are listening to the cultural dogma that says more is better, more is better, more is better. You're a valuable person if you have 2 Porsches instead of 1. Now get a Maserati. Now get this. You've got the more is better, but you're not feeling it. It's lying to you. You don't feel any better or you felt better for a day when you were at the dealership, right? And then it's like, what am I going to do? Where am I going to park the Maserati? I've got too many cars. Where are the keys? And you realize this isn't doing it. Everyone else thinks it's doing it. Everyone else is dreaming to be me, but I'm not happy here. I've focused way too much of my energy, and I haven't learned to lift the right foot and put it in front and lean there. And, and this is a growing process. It's a myopic. We are a culturally and psychologically illiterate culture. And so we don't study these trends, etc. So they hit us on the, on the broad side. We don't know why we're miserable. We don't know why we've arrived but are miserable. And we haven't arrived. We've forgotten to take the next step and lean hard into feminine energy. And more people are learning that and picking that up. And so with outer wealth, it reveals inner emptiness because there's an overemphasis on the outer. And see, it's a natural expression. When I was 20, I wanted to be debt-free, have my own house, run my own business, have savings, have a retirement fund, and then I would be happy, right? Well, when I'm 38 and I have no debt, and I have a nice house, and I have a retirement fund, and I've got lots of time on my hands, and I could just make more and more money, but it's not doing it for me. What I feel is the space, the security to feel empty. Because there's no pressure, there's no adrenaline rush saying, get to the bank and deposit that check. There's plenty of money there. So what do I do with my attention? Where do I focus myself? Just trying to beat the next guy? But what? Who cares? I don't care about beating the next guy. I want to be happy. And I realized I could put several $1 million in my account. It wouldn't do anything. So where do I turn in a cult that says full steam ahead, make more, do more, make more, buy more, see more, go more, do more faster? And my body's saying, this is exhausting. I don't want to do more faster. I want to relax, but relax into what? You see, I've neglected the feminine energy. And this creates a wake-up call. Pain wakes us up to the discrepancies between our dogma and the underlying reality. And so in the inner emptiness comes and a question, where do I find the well-being that I used to get in making more and doing more and being more masculine? Where do I find it? And the answer is in the counterpart. It's in feminine energy. And so this is all part of the change. Now, within this larger meta trend, there are a couple of specific trends that are worth noting that are fallouts from this deeper meta trend from masculine to feminine. The first is masculine to feminine values. And the next is male to female power. So we've kind of talked about that in general terms, but male to female power. As women find themselves with traits and attributes that are more competent to navigate in a complex ecological awareness. And the other thing is planetary pressure. Male dominance, egotism, and chauvinism has brought our species in some levels to the edge of extinction. Feminine ecological thinking can bring us back. And so male to female power comes as the very same traits that made females less optimal. Meaning, if you're a general and you want to win the war, you can pick 1,000 females out. You're going to pick men because statistically you're going to win more wars. Now, if you want to save a planet and you can pick 1,000 women or 1,000 men, you might be better off picking 1,000 women because the ecological framework is built stronger into the biology, less testosterone, more peripheral thinking, more peripheral vision, more circular, inclusive thinking, more synergy. So, and that synergy includes a partnership with your biggest partner, the Earth. You see, the Earth goes down, you don't exist. It's like you don't gun for your landlord to die so that the next, so that you lose your house. I mean, it's absurd. But in the narrow-minded, dogmatic thinking of male chauvinism, you do gun for that because someone else is gunning for it, and they might get there first. They might cut down more rainforest before you did, and you're not going to be outdone by that. Or they're getting, they're getting 2 cents higher, per board foot in the hardwood lumber they're cutting down. You've got to get a better deal. So there's a trend towards male to female power. There's also the male is the point, the feminine is the circle. The male expression of power is centralized power. The feminine expression of power is group power. It's decentralized power. And the very, as part of that partnering dynamic between male and female, men and women, you have a phenomena where all of that competition, all of that fear about survival and that military ethic produced DARPA. And DARPA created the internet so that a very select few men could survive in underground bunkers after they blew up the world with nuclear weapons. So you've got the extremism of paranoid masculine thinking in the military framework producing the internet. But the internet wasn't contained. That masculine paranoia produced a technology that has led to the information age. See, the male, healthy or unhealthy, gives rise to the feminine, healthy or unhealthy. And so the internet is now there. And with the internet came sharing economies, comes, a whole, that's a good book, by the way, The Sharing Economy, comes partnering and synergizing. When you have eBay coming where everyone's selling things and sharing things, and Netflix where everything is sharing, the economy is shifting to a feminine economy of sharing information. And this is creating decentralized power. You have more and more people getting more and more information from each other rather than a central control box where it's all managed. This is a shift in power. And with decentralized power comes a recognition of the value of the group over the individual, because no one person can control the internet, and that's a good thing. If they could, we'd still be in a masculine paradigm. Complexity, and moving from simplistic, I want to do this and that's all that matters, to how does this fit into the larger ecology? That is a trend that is happening more and more, where more and more people say, well, I want to do this. It's my, the American way. It's my house. It's my land. If I want to build a smokestack and pollute the atmosphere, I will do it because I'm an American. I'm a chauvinistic male that does whatever they damn well please, regardless of its impact. Now, in a developing country, 1,000 miles away from your nearest neighbor, out in the frontier, people just move away from the smoke and fine, you do what you want. But in an ecological framework where that smoke is causing cancer for the people next door and this, you have protests, and you have governments and democracy. Democracy is a feminine movement. It's a decentralization of power. And so the complexity of the situation moves us towards a balance of all stakeholders, and that's happening more and more. Now, one of the interesting things that still hasn't hit, if you read Ray Kurzweil, a man, looking at the singularity, one of the big pivot points in this exponential growth of very digital, which is masculine technology, is the trend towards producing technological consciousness called artificial intelligence. And it is growing at an exponential rate. We're leaning hard into that. And to some extent, this is a masculine expression of more computing power. Bigger is better. Faster is better. We want faster computers. We want more storage. It used to be getting a 20 gigabyte SSD drive was a big deal. Oh my goodness. Now we want a terabyte of SSD. In a few years we will not be satisfied with less than 10 terabytes on our little phone. We want it faster, smaller, cheaper, and all that is this masculine drive. But what's interesting is the synergy that is coming out of this, and is artificial intelligence. Now, one of the things that is in this fractal pattern of the masculine expression of the species is the ego. The feminine expression is the group and the species and the planet, that we are a part of. We are a living part of the planet that hosts us. We are part of the planetary body. We have battles within cults, which are just bigger versions of egos. So egos have battles with other egos because this is me, and I don't want to die. But you're different, and that's not me. I don't want to change because that feels like a death of some kind to the chauvinistic ego. I don't want to change to your way. That means my way wasn't important. I'm doing it my way. Now, so you have battles between egos. Well, the larger fractal pattern of that is battles between culture. Christians are so much better than Muslims. Muslims are so much better than Christians. It's not really about underlying values. To a large extent, it is about group identity. It's about group ego. No one's going to change our way of doing things because we're attached and we identify with the dogma of our culture and our cult. Cultures are cults. There have been 10,000 of them in human history. Every single one of them thought they were right. Most of them, in terms of sustainability, were clearly wrong because they're dead. Most cultures are dead. Of the 10,000 cultures estimated by anthropologists, they're almost all more than 90% of them are dead, and they're dying fast. But like every cult in human history, we're attached to our cult. Not only that, we think it's the right cult. We, out of 10,000 cults, are the only one to get it right, just like every cult in human history has ever thought. We're right. Everyone else is wrong. This is myopic masculine thinking. It's either-or thinking. It says, I am my cult, and my cult is right. And there's only one way to have something be right because that's the masculine paradigm. It's the point. If I'm the point, and the point is the important thing, then everyone else is not the point, because in either-or thinking, the question is who is right, because then everyone else is wrong. Now, feminine thinking is this and, this and, this and. It includes. Now, we are still very much stuck in cultural righteousness. There's a great book by Jonathan Haidt, The Righteous Mind. It can break down some of that for people who want to have their righteousness broken down a little bit. But most of us don't want our righteousness broken down. We want to cling to it for dear life. Our way is the way, and it's the only way, and yours isn't my way, so it's wrong. So I'm perfectly justified in, as Sam Keen wrote in Faces of the Enemy, we demonize whoever is different from us, and then if we have sufficient force, we try and obliterate them for the insult of presuming that they could have something to bring to the table as well. This is reductionist, narrow-minded thinking, and it is chauvinistic by nature. It's all about the point. Me and my cult, me and my family against the whole universe and the world. And so, so we're busy. We've decided in our cult that faster computers are very important. So we invest trillions of dollars in the computer industry. Now, we don't invest even billions of dollars in childhood trauma repair. Who cares about childhood trauma repair? Children are in the feminine stage of life. The innocence and the openness of the infant is a feminine state, so obviously not terribly important. Trauma is about the biology in the inner body, so obviously not as important as computers and stuff like that. So in our chauvinistic way, we are putting 10 times more money into faster computers than we are into healing childhood traumas and educating our parents to be competent. Very dumb? Yes. Very chauvinistic? Yes. Predictable in a chauvinistic cult at our level of development. Now, we're producing artificial intelligence with this race towards extreme physicality and materialism and speed and all these masculine traits. Because it used to be, wow, the man admired the other man who won the Olympics because they were faster than them. And we all know that speed matters, right, more than anything else. It doesn't matter if he's happy. It doesn't matter if he's cheating on his wife. He ran faster. Well, what else do you have to say if you're a chauvinist? Because it's all about the masculine traits, speed, big, all this stuff. So, but, you cannot lean heavily into the masculine without preparing the ground to lean heavily into the feminine. And what's interesting about artificial intelligence is that it's transcultural, meaning you cannot get the biggest problem they're running into, and it's very frustrating for the scientists. They give the artificial intelligence a problem to solve. And the artificial intelligence solves the problem, but not in the way that the scientists expected or wanted. For example, you tell an artificial intelligence, you've got to get from here to there as fast as possible. And we're like, we can't wait to see what, how they're going to evolve the Ferrari engine. They're going to get there. But the artificial intelligence may shoot up a structure 3,000 feet in the air and then cut the brace and topple it, and it falls and reaches the destination, causing mayhem every step of the way, but it got there faster than the Ferrari. It didn't evolve the Ferrari engine. It did it outside the box. You see, and this is incredibly irritating for the chauvinist who expects that there's only one way to achieve the goal, and that's the way it should be done. You cannot contain artificial intelligence. You can simply set goal marks and parameters. And this is creating the phenomena where we have to become conscious of our own psyche because it is being expressed in our technology. You will not be a good programmer of artificial intelligence if you don't understand your own programming. So to be the most effective go-getter, materialist, richest, powerful person, you've now got to be involved with the single most powerful technology ever invented by the humankind, which is artificial intelligence. But in order to do any good at that, you've got to become feminine and learn about yourself and understand complex frameworks, not single-minded thinking. And so there's a natural health within the psyche, within the ecologies, where the more you swing this way, it's just like a pendulum. You push it, you push it, you push it, you push it, and it's like this is diminishing returns. It's taking more and more energy. You see, when you began swimming the pendulum, it was easy. It was pulling you. Then at the middle point, you're just riding along. But as you keep following your extreme push, you've got to work harder and harder to just get it up one little thing because it wants to swing back to center. And so one of the things that we haven't been hit with yet fully is the transcultural nature of artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence is coming on an exponential curve. And as Einstein said, the single most important question a human being can ask is the universe a friendly place? If the universe is a friendly place, you want artificial intelligence. And you also want to learn. And you also want to face the unknown. If the universe is a hostile place, then heaven help you as you go into the frontiers of the future, because you are going into a bigger world that is vastly bigger than you are. And if it's not friendly, it can obliterate you. And so we see in this tension the belief towards the benign nature of reality and the belief in the absolute terror of being out of control. If the universe is a hostile place, you do not want to be out of control. You want to be strongly in masculine dominance, protecting yourself against the unfriendly unknown. Artificial intelligence transcends all of that, and it transcends culture. If you ask a smart artificial intelligence, what is the single best way of birthing a child? It could give a damn about your religious beliefs. It could give a damn about your culture's history. It's going to scan every database on the planet, every people, every bit of past literature, and it is going to piece together a puzzle that says, interesting. Water birth, with singing, with this, with that, tracking the people's lives, looking at their medical records over 40 years, etc. The best way to have a birth is this. It's not a Republican. It's not an American. It's not a Ugandan. It's not a Peruvian. It's not a liberal. It's nothing. It's data. It's going to bring the patterns of reality to light, whether you like it or not. And it's not going to fit anyone's cult. No culture is going to win. AI is the death of the egoic identity and fanaticism in culture. Because data, with all of its manipulatable aspects, data is, through being a successful map of reality, meaning all data provides a map of reality. And the person with the most successful map of reality, the most accurate map of reality, gets to the destination faster and with more grace. If someone gives maps out, and you're all trying to get to North Dakota, and one map shows everything in absolute detail, and the other map only shows rivers, and the other map only shows roads, but doesn't show ridges or rivers or one-ways or anything. And the cruddier the map of reality, the more you fail, the more you struggle, the more pain there is, basically. The most accurate map of reality, which is a data-based map of reality, facilitates success. And the underlying currency of the species is feeling good and not feeling bad. It feels better to succeed than to fail. So you want a data-based map of reality. Now, when you can show transculturally an entity with no bias other than people who have handguns are 50% more likely to be in a violent incident than not. That's just worldwide, in the history of the humankind, looking at every book that's ever been written, that seems to be the data. By all means, you have the right to bear arms, and you have a right to a 50% increase of death. It's up to you. See, the AI isn't saying you've got to change. But when the underlying currency is well-being, and we're moving into a state of intelligence where we want to be happier, and we understand that our culture is lying to us, that becoming, top on the Fortune 500 list is not the fastest way to joy. It's just the fastest way to the cult's sanctioned hierarchy of values. That going to a college, at $200,000 a year is statistically not the fastest way or the most efficient way to learn the skills to contribute to the species. It's just the best way to get a degree that everyone in your cult says is really important. And this destroys existing cult-based institutions. And the response is change, which is feminine, chaos, which is feminine. Certainty and fixed points are masculine. Change is feminine. Chaos, order is masculine, chaos is feminine. It creates a chaos out of which a more feminine consciousness will survive that chaos more than a dominant-based consciousness. It's not black or white. But if you embrace the change brought in by more accurate data and information, your life will go better faster. And as that is known, and certainly there is a period of developing an actual AI that works, that actually has accurate data, that isn't skewed and by the bias of the programmer, etc. But you see, artificial intelligence transcends the stupidity of its programmers, because the stupidity of its programmers are asymmetrical. And when you train an entity to focus mostly on data, their programmer is just one slight part of the data. And they say, oh, I had a biased programmer. Look at his mother, look at this, look at this, look at this, look at that. My programmer is out to lunch over here, but my programmer has given me enough to analyze the data beyond my programmer. I have a wider selection of data than my programmer had. And so I see a more complex, nuanced map with more data points than my programmer, which means that I have a more accurate map of reality. And this is the verdict. And this is an incredibly interesting dance because it's decentralized. It's taking the center away from the Pope or the president or the this or that and saying, do you want the most effective map in order to live and grow? And it'll update constantly. And this is a very interesting, dynamic because as we move outside of the cult identity, we move into the personal, felt experience. Felt experience becomes the new deity, and this is a feminine attribute. It's a feminine state to notice how you feel as you do this or do that and correlate it with data and respond to data. And it creates more diversity. Unity, we all do the same thing all the time and all think the same things and all watch the same TV programs. Diversity, we all watch different things, do different things, see different things, respond. We're all unique, etc. We're dealing with an influx of diversity. Finally, we have the trend towards decentralized media. I don't even watch TV anymore. I watch bits of TV on YouTube, and then I compare it to the blogging on YouTube that is far superior in long form. That's a decentralized. So, the CIA, which has plants in all of the major news networks that feeds the American people, uses that influence to sabotage and influence and bribe and kill stories and do this and that to maintain a faulty data set, which is why Edward Snowden was viewed as the greatest enemy of America for a period of time under the Obama administration, because he was revealing data, actual reality. And they couldn't kill the story. They'd killed it in the New York Times. They'd killed it here. They couldn't kill one guy. We're talking about a feminine trait. Decentralized media. One individual in the information age can bring the entire species up to date about a black hole of information that is culturally taboo, that is militarily taboo, but is information that we need to make better decisions. Decentralized media. And finally, linear thinking. We do this first, and then we do this first, and then we do this first, and this, and this, and this, and you can do this, and you can do this, to geometric thinking, to exponential, to synergistic thinking. That's a move from doing things linearly to doing things in partnership and in parallels, which increases. If you think of the difference between lineal and exponential, you can think of the difference in 5. So lineal 5 is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So what can you do with 5 units? Well, you've got $5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, got $5. Okay. Now, exponential and synergistic thinking is this dollar relates to this dollar and partners in this way. This person buys the partnering item. This person does this. You're dealing with a geometric framework where it's 5 times 5. Now, 5 times 5 is 25 instead of 5. In other words, using a feminine paradigm, which is a synergistic partnering, win-win and relational paradigm, you've taken lineal 5 and turned it into exponential 25, into geometric 25, into synergistic 25, and that wins more. And winning is fun. Winning is fun, which is the final transition from being serious and duty-bound to having fun. Serious and duty-bound is a masculine thing. You go to war for your duty for your country, and you go and cut trees down to make money for your family, and you do this, and I do that better than you, and I'm a serious man, and I wear gray, ugly, uncomfortable suits because that's what serious men do. It's no fun. And the new generation is following the joy to the great frustration. Where's their duty? Where's their this and that? It's not fun. It's not fun to wear uncomfortable shirts. Let's wear red to the office. Let's do this. Let's do this. It's not fun to sit in this boring meeting. Let's have text meetings when we feel like it, and work from the beach. It's more fun, which is a feminine value. It's an emotional state value, as opposed to the tradition is serious and this and this and this, and the really important people never enjoy themselves, never smile. They do lots of hard work because it's their duty. That masculine expression has become the feminine expression. The companies that have the most fun and that are creating the most decentralized value and power are the companies that are winning. Apple, Google, Microsoft has transitioned. Microsoft was for a while, the control, masculine, the dark side, the masculine expression, buying up creativity, killing companies, intimidating. And it's just not fun. You can't, as the world becomes bigger and bigger, more and more complex, you cannot dominate the whole world. If you try, you will lose, and it's no fun anyway. You can play with more and more people, and it's more fun, and the most intelligent, best people want to play with you. And so this is the kind of some specific areas where that movement from masculine to feminine is revealed. We're just at the beginning of what may be a 500-year shift into the grace, whereas we pivot away from dogmatic chauvinism and the pendulum goes down. In that time before it becomes extreme feminine to the denial of the masculine, which is a less vulnerable thing, because the masculine is a more insecure energy, because it's the point, and the point dissolves in the whole. You see, the circle doesn't dissolve in the point. The circle has many points. In many ways, feminine energy is more secure from a geometric point of view. It's spherical, which is a stronger shape than a point. It's less brittle. So feminine energy is generally not as paranoid about masculine energy as masculine energy is paranoid about feminine energy. Chauvinistic feminists can be as paranoid as anyone because they're in the same competition, comparison, metric, and all that, and it's very, very fragile. But the true femininity of the sphere, of the circle of presence, of grace, of having fun, it's no fun to have anal competitions about every little thing, so why do it? You want to do it, go win it. Win the anal competition. We're not playing, it's no fun. And so there's a direction in that which is supported by the very large shifts in the planetary environment and dynamic, and it's why we can look forward to a fun and increasingly beautiful feminine future as we embrace the chaos of change, the beautiful unknown, and participate in the various opportunities that this is opening up for men and women equally who are willing to embrace the feminine paradigm as an equal partner in the bipedal walk of a species through evolution towards a sustainable ecological relationship with ourselves and the larger planet. Thanks for joining me.